if you're a young guy and you're considering going to college, let's go ahead and break down if it indeed is something that you should pursue, do, get into. Real quick, let's just go ahead and brush up on my resume. So I, I went to community college, believe it or not. This is kind of embarrassing to say, but I went to community college for 4 years. What was supposed to take 2 took me 4. And then I did a bachelor's, double major, got 3 years down my belt there. Did a master's, another 2 years, and then did a credential program, another year. So essentially a decade in the institution, right? Navigating sort of the fault lines, if you will, of being in a place like that, right? Of being in an echo chamber. Because that's really what it is, right? There's a lot of it that's real, but a lot of it is inflated. A lot of it is a simulation of what reality is supposed to be. It's rules on easy mode. It is life on easy mode in many ways. Because the trajectory is pretty much laid out for you. You take a certain amount of classes, you get in, you get a piece of paper that says you can do X, Y, Z. You get out, and then you navigate into the real world, and you figure it out from there. But let's look at the positives, right? The positives of pursuing college as a young guy is the social capital that you can accrue, right? The habitus that you get from socializing with a lot of different people, interacting with people that you otherwise wouldn't be around. And if you think about it, it is the amount of socializing you can do in college is more than you could ever do at any other point in your life because of the sheer amounts of people that are there at one time in a particular space. So there's that part, right? The socializing is something that you can heavily take advantage of. Meeting women, obviously, right? Approaching women, that sort of thing, definitely easier to do there than in some other places, right? Because just being in the same environment already kind of creates, it allows for that to happen, is essentially what it is. So from that perspective, it's not a bad thing either. The other thing is too, is you're also going to encounter ideas and information at a speed and rate in which you probably wouldn't do on your own. So there's that part of it. And I think those are positive. So if you're a young guy and you're like, what should I do? Definitely do that. My biggest concern, my biggest fear for a young man would be not having anything mapped out, not sort of having any lay of the land, not chartered any landscapes. And then you just get out of high school, for example, and you're kind of like, oh, I'm gonna take a gap year, and then the gap year becomes a decade where you're just sitting around malingering. You don't want to go that route either. But keep in mind, if you are gonna pursue college or higher education, you got to keep in mind that there is gonna be a lot of pitfalls. I remember one of the first classes I ever took was a women's studies course, and you know, you can just imagine the vocabulary that's being spewed in these type of classes, right? Social constructs, the patriarchy, white anything, insert anything, right? Whiteness, colonialism, all these things, right? That sort of paint a picture, right? And you can almost sympathize with the people that run in that direction because that victim mindset is very palatable and very plug and chug and very easy to follow. And so anybody who is not intelligent will just run the gamut. And frankly, as I mentioned, it is an ego chamber because what ends up happening is you will go to university and you get force fed, spoon fed a certain aspect of the world, a certain perspective. And then that becomes the way that you color the world around you. And you end up thinking this is the only way to think. And that part is troubling for sure, because it seems like everybody kind of gets through it and comes out with the same idea by the end of it. So there's that part. The other thing is too, is that there are more women to men in university, right? So there's that aspect of it that's I think it's 2-to-1 already. And the other concern becomes that you go to college and there's no guarantee of anything afterwards. The only guarantee you have is that for sure you will graduate, because anybody can graduate. But the concern is what happens afterwards, right? It's not a guarantee of anything. I think the employment rate is the same for a college degree versus someone that doesn't have a college degree. So go figure. There are some metrics that do suggest that perhaps a college education does allow you to choose for a better person to marry or health outcomes. But maybe it's not necessarily the college itself, the education you're getting, but more so the idea of having to go that route, which kind of sidesteps a lot of the riffraff that perhaps someone that doesn't go to college will have to deal with and confront. So there's that part. And so you got these issues economically that I don't think college is being able to address. Not to mention everything that comes with having to work in an environment where a lot of what's happening in college kind of spills into the workforce, a lot of the vocabulary and the safe spaces and this and that. And it becomes very apparent that a lot of those ideas have kind of trickled into the workforce, and they've colored the culture of work environments. They're not so cutthroat and gung-ho like they used to be. Everything is very soft, and so there's that part of it too. So it's something to think about. But if you're a young guy and considering going to college, just keep in mind the part that there are definitely some pros to it, but I think the way that the economy is working, I think there's more cons than pros. So it's just something to consider. If you're not really interested in going to get an education or for the socializing and for those aspects, then maybe that's not the route you should go. Maybe you should pursue something that is going to allow you to have more freedom and not be bogged down by the nonsense that you're going to get in institutions of higher learning. But anyhow, I hope this helps.